All right, we're back. We're back in the series about a guy with a coat with many colors, and I once again will get to be Joel with many colors on the blackboard. We're catching up today. We got a long ways to go. We obviously had a snow day, and so buckle in. This is a two-in-one, just trying to cram it all together. Genesis 39, 40, and 41. For those of you that had a chance to read ahead, I hope that you're blessed by that. And if you're not, that's all right. We're going to jump in, and I'm going to try to do my best to catch everybody up to speed. Honestly, the more I have read and studied about the person of Joseph, the more I have realized, man, we could stretch this out over a year. And we're not going to do that. There's only 4 more weeks in the series. And so that's the task at hand today is to take a long part of the Bible, 121 verses altogether, and just kind of bring it into a 35-minute message for you, which really highlights the task of getting to teach through the Bible, which is not to say everything that it says, but to ask God, as I prepare, Lord, as we're making our way through this part of the Bible this time, what do you want to say? Which parts do you want to highlight for Three Creeks on February 1st? Because we might go through this story again at another time, and you might do a Bible study on Genesis next year, and maybe as you go through that time, it'll be something different. But the task at hand today is, as we go through this time, God, what do you want to say to us? And so I say that almost to warn you that I can't bring up every important point, and I'm sure I'll skip a detail in the story that might be important to you, but I'm just trying to answer that question, God, what do you want us to hear from you this time through? To start off, what I want to share today, I'm curious what you think about this question. What do you think Ohioans are the most proud of? Because, Hocking Hills is fine, but there's not many people. It's great, don't get me wrong, but I can think of other places in the country. So when you think about like vacation destinations, I'm not sure Ohio is at the top. I know we call ourselves the home of, or the birthplace of aviation, but I kind of think we're cheating because I'm pretty sure they were in North Carolina, and then what? I was wrong about that, I think. They were born here. And so were 7 United States presidents, all right? And we're in second place in that category. Maybe, though, I think if I asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT agreed with me on this one, that if you ask all the Ohioans what we're the most proud of, what we have that nobody else has, at or near the top of the list that I looked at was Cedar Point. We've got Cedar Point. Nobody else can touch Cedar Point. And I remember as an 8-year-old kid going, does anybody remember when the Magnum was the tallest roller coaster at Cedar Point? I remember getting on the Magnum, my dad essentially tricking me into getting onto the Magnum when I was 8, and I was like, man, I can do this. And then as we were climbing up the Magnum, I physically unbuckled myself and said, I just can't do it, I can't do it, and started crawling out of the car, and my dad had to physically hold me down in to ride the Magnum, and then I got off. He's like, how was it? I'm like, no big deal, no big deal. And man, when you go to, my kids are at the age right now, age 9, age 7, they're catching whiffs of Cedar Point, so I feel like maybe even 2026 is my comeback year to Cedar Point. But I can't go to Cedar Point without looking at all of the roller coasters, the ones that take you way up and then way down, the ones that take you around and around, some of them just, man, you get off, you go, that was the thrill of my life. Some of them you get off and you go, I'm going to go throw up. And I think, I'm making a big jump here, but if you stick with me, I think you'll track with me. Man, that is a lot what life feels like. For those of us that have lived a little bit, you go, man, yeah. That is a pretty good picture of what life looks like. There's ups, there's downs. There's seasons to enjoy, there's seasons to endure. There's as my kids call it, happies and crappies. There are times that are just thrilling. You're without words to describe how full of joy you are. And then there are other times where you are without words at the pain that you are experiencing. There are times to enjoy and there are times to endure. And this is life. And Joseph, if he were sitting here, he'd be like, yes, that's exactly how I felt for the first 30 years of my life. Like, no, I don't know if you can find a person in the Bible who rode a roller coaster of life quite like Joseph did, age 0 to 30. Well, if you think about this, Joseph, he was born into a great family. I mean, he had 11 older brothers to wrestle with him and train him up, and he also had a dad who loved him so much, like they waited, him and Rachel waited for years and years to have him. He was like the favored son. He had food on his table. He had 11 brothers. He had a huge inheritance ahead of him. Ages 0 to 6 or so for Joseph, man, he was living the dream. And then things take a turn, man. When he's 6 or 7 years old, he has to say goodbye to his grandpa, like out of nowhere, never sees him again for the rest of his life. He has to move a bunch of times. Their family had a kind of a nanny, but basically raised Joseph. Her name was Deborah, and she died when Joseph was just a little kid. And then the good news was that Joseph was getting a little brother, and his name was Benjamin. But as Benjamin took his first breaths as a baby boy, Joseph and Benjamin's mother, Rachel, took her last breaths, and she died. So Joseph's just a kid with Deborah and his biological mother, Rachel. They just died. And he doesn't have a clue where they're going. And there's some envy and hatred kind of building up towards him from his 10 older brothers. But then they arrive in where Grandpa Isaac was at. Isaac was rich, Jacob's rich, their family's rich, and so they end up they are very well off in this new place called Canaan. They kind of reestablish their home. Joseph gets this coat of many colors, which was very significant, kind of represented his importance in the family. Not only does he get a coat of many colors that signifies his importance as a family, but God also gives Joseph these dreams that highlight the future life of significance that he's going to have. He's got this dream about how he's the biggest stalk of wheat, and the other stalks of wheat bow down to Joseph. He's got this dream about the the moon and the stars, and they bow down to the sun, and that's Joseph. And the older brothers, they don't write that off of Joseph just being a kid telling them about his dreams. They feel it too, that Joseph is going to be the most significant brother in the family. And so Joseph, for a period of time, maybe in his teenage years, he knows what's coming. He's got a big future ahead of him. And then this envy grows in his brothers. His father Jacob sends him to go check on his brothers. He travels couple days all the way to Dothan, and while the brothers see him a long ways off, they plot to kill their little brother. Jacob's not even there, can't protect his son. He finally runs into him. They plotted to kill him. One of the brothers, Reuben, says, maybe it's probably better if we don't kill him, but let's just put him in a hole instead. Reuben had a plan to come get him later. They put him in a hole, and when Reuben was off doing something, I don't know, but another brother, Judah, says, you know what, better off, rather than killing him, rather than leave him in this hole, let's just sell him into slavery. And so for a bag of silver coins, the 10 older brothers sell their younger brother Joseph into slavery. They put him in a caravan of Ishmaelites headed towards Egypt. And so down here, at this point in his life, Joseph's 17 or so, he's going to Egypt, riding in the back of a caravan, tied up, thinking, what happened to those dreams, God? There's no way that this is going to play out where everybody's bound down to me. What is going on here? At the bottom, he's sold into slavery into Potiphar's house. Potiphar's the chief of the royal police. Anybody could have bought him. But the chief of the royal police, Potiphar, ends up buying him. And it's right there in this place where Joseph does not want to be where he is, he rallies, man. He makes the most of it. He learns Egyptian. He works hard. He ends up being the best slave that this pagan's ever had. And so he's in Potiphar's house, and the Lord protects him. The Lord's presence doesn't lead him. He gets a promotion, and they prosper. The cows are fat. The crops are growing. The Potiphar's kids get straight A's, and it's a lot attributed to Joseph and the Lord's hand on his life. Joseph can feel the presence of God again. And then, Potiphar, he's digging Joseph for sure. He promotes him to be his personal aide. He's not the only person in the house who's digging Joseph. Potiphar's wife, Joseph catches her eye. The Bible describes Joseph as strikingly handsome. And this is what it says in Genesis, in the middle of Genesis 39. It says, after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. And it wasn't just one request. It was over and over and over, or over a period of months, maybe years, where Potiphar's wife was saying, you can have me. And Joseph over and over and over says no. And he doesn't say no. This is so important. And I was going to talk a lot about this last week. We're not going to hit on it that much today. But I want you to notice, if you read through Genesis 39, why Joseph says no. He doesn't say no because he's afraid of the earthly consequences. He doesn't say no because he doesn't want to betray Potiphar. He doesn't say no because he can't handle an unwanted pregnancy. He doesn't say no because she's not beautiful. He says no because he fears the Lord. He does not want to sin in the eyes of God. And so over and over and over, Joseph says no, no, no. There comes a day, and it's interesting too, I don't know if you noticed this, but it says after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph. Which leads me to believe, the text leads me to believe that the first time she thought, oh, that guy looks pretty good, she didn't just run up to him. She wasn't overcome with lust and said, please now. No. This was something that happened over a while. It started through her eyes and in her head. This sin brewed for a while, and oh, it does that. And I was going to talk about this a lot last week too, and we don't have time to stay there too long today, but man, sin, when it is in the dark, when it is a secret, that is where it grows the most. And I just wonder if anybody in here just needs me to flag this for them, to say, hey, you may not have acted out yet in a sinful way like Potiphar's wife, but have your eyes and your mind recently been more open to those kind of ideas? Because that's where it starts. Sins that destroy our lives are not often this moment of rash decision. It's something that builds in the dark when nobody knows about it. There comes a day where finally Potiphar's wife schemes and gets Joseph to be alone in the house. And she says, today's the day. You can have me. And he says, no. And he even has to, it seems like, physically push her off of him. And while he's doing that, she takes his coat and holds onto it. And then she can't handle the fact that he rejected her. And so she screams and makes up this story about how Joseph was the one who made advances on her. She tells Potiphar. Potiphar doesn't give Joseph his day in court. He doesn't hear the other side of the story. It says that Potiphar was filled with anger and immediately threw Joseph into the prison. So he didn't even ask him, is this true? He just took his wife's word for it. And I highlighted, man, rarely have I ever made a decision when I'm angry. I get angry from time to time. And when I make decisions when I'm angry, I usually regret them. Prisons are full of people who made really bad decisions while they were angry. And Potiphar here is an example. Somebody who is the chief of the royal police. You would think, for the most part, he's a level-headed, sober-minded man if he's leading the Egyptian police force. But because he's overwhelmed with anger, he makes the foolish decision to throw innocent Joseph into jail. Can I tell you about this jail? An average height of an Egyptian dungeon was 4 feet. It was essentially a hole in the ground that was 4 feet tall, so you couldn't stand up straight. And do you know what that does to a person's body over time? It was down under the ground, it was damp, there was no ventilation. Do you know what that does to a person's lungs over time? No mattress, no pillow, no clean water, no toilets. In Psalm 105, it actually refers to Joseph. This is written years and years and years later. It says that they bruised his feet with shackles, his neck was put in irons. He was chained up in one of these holes. No basketball hoop, no gymnasium, no sunshine for years. They gave him what's called the bread of affliction. You know what the bread of affliction is? It's just enough bread to keep your body going, but it never quenches your hunger. You're always hungry, but you're still alive. And remember, Joseph didn't do anything wrong. Oh yeah, we're definitely down here now, aren't we? Joseph didn't do anything wrong. He's innocent. He said no every time she made her advances. And I just think we got to stop here for a second, and I got to ask you, have you ever been falsely accused? Have you ever been falsely accused and not gotten your day in court by a boss or an employee or a coworker or a spouse? Have you ever been falsely? It is just infuriating. See, it's one thing to do something wrong and get caught for it. That stinks. It is a whole other thing to be accused of doing something wrong that you didn't do and still be accused for it. That's worse. Think about this. If you're driving down the road and you are speeding 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, the cop pulls you over, says you are getting a ticket today. Man, that stinks. But it was coming. You know what I mean? Like, you deserved the ticket. You're going over the speed limit. Can you imagine the scenario? You are driving the speed limit, keeping it between the lines, using your blinker right and left, full stops at stop signs. Man, you're doing it right. And the police comes up to you, they pull you over, and they said, you know why I stopped you today? And you say, I honestly have no idea. And the police officer says, well, you've been going 15 miles over the speed limit. We're giving you a ticket today. Your mind would explode. For the first time ever, you'd actually go to court to fight this thing. You would say, absolutely not. The injustice of that. I can remember in high school, I had a teacher named Mr. Kapka, and he said that he wanted me, apparently he said I was talking in class. I disagree, but he said, hey, we want you to write a 2-page paper on, I don't even remember who it was, some historical lady. And I just went to Google, copy and pasted a 2-page paper right onto my Word document, turned it into Mr. Kapka. Shouldn't be a problem, you know, I'm free and clear from these false accusations. And the next day, he printed off the Google article and stapled it and highlighted all the things that I had plagiarized right back to me. And he said, why don't we try 4 pages this time? And he just gave it back to me. And I was caught, man, and that stunk. It did. I remember my blood pressure just kind of going up, and I was caught. And it stinks to get caught for something that you did. When I was in college, it was my senior year, and It was during the season when you had to order your cap and gown. You know, I don't know, January, February of your senior year. And I remember I went to the mailbox and I got this half sheet of paper that gave the instructions. Here's where you go online and sign in and pick your size or whatever. And I just stuffed it in my backpack and I went to my class, and it was testing day, and we took these tests on our computers, but I don't know how it all worked. I forget. It was a while ago. But I remember taking the test, and I remember getting done. And then I remember thinking, oh, shoot, while we're here, may as well just order my cap and gown. So I pulled this, I submitted my test. I pulled this half sheet of paper out of my backpack. I put it on my lap. I kind of went to the website and ordered my cap and gown. Good to go. Put it back in my backpack, left. Well, I get the next time I go to class, the professor says, hey, I'd like to talk to you after class. I said, yeah, no problem. Sounds good. Got nothing to hide. And he says, I'd like actually to talk to you in my office. I said, okay, sounds good. Maybe I got the best grade in the class, reward meeting. And I went up there. He said, hey, somebody in class is accusing you of cheating during the test. And I froze, man. I was falsely accused, and I just couldn't. He said, somebody said that you had a piece of paper on your lap during the test. And I can't even get the words out in just trying to explain and defend myself because I was so innocent. The feeling of being falsely accused, just how Joseph would have felt being drugged to this prison having done nothing wrong. If you have ever been falsely accused and you have had moments where you haven't had your day in court, for one, I know that stinks. Two, I think there's more of those coming. And three, there's one person in the Bible who can relate to you even more than Joseph can, and it's the person of Jesus Christ, who was drug in front of the whole Sanhedrin, and false charge after false charge is launched against him. And they just try to come up with stories and evidence to try to get people to turn against Jesus. And these powerful people kind of work the crowd up into a frenzy and finally get the whole crowd to turn, and they start saying, crucify him, crucify him. And what did Jesus do during that whole time? The Bible says that he just didn't do anything. He remained silent in the face of these accusations and this persecution. He was led like a lamb. He can relate if you've ever felt falsely accused. And what's interesting about that story, man, there are other times where Jesus does stand up and does speak truth and does kind of defend who he is. But what's interesting about that is if you rewind in Jesus' life to this moment where he's teaching all of his disciples about how to handle persecution, how to handle accusation, in the Sermon on the Mount, he says, hey, if anybody is going to persecute you, accuse you, hate you, here's what we're going to do. We are going to pray for them. It was a well-accepted idea in that day and age that if someone were to persecute you or accuse you, you were more likely to slay them than pray for them. Jesus says, we're going to do things differently than anybody's ever done before in history. Rather than fight back and throw punches and try to take other people down, we are going to pray for them. And so I ask you the question one more time. Lately, has anyone falsely accused you? And if so, have you prayed for them? Because it might change them. But I know for sure that it will change you. And I know that that's what Jesus was getting at when he said, pray for those who persecute you and who say all kinds of false things against you. So Joseph's in jail. I don't know if he prayed for Potiphar's wife. I don't know if he prayed for Potiphar. I don't know. Could have. Text doesn't say. What it does say is that the same thing that happened in Potiphar's house, this rise to the top, happens in prison too. It says that the Lord was with Joseph, that he acted in a way that gained the respect of the prison warden. And the guard of the prison put Joseph in charge of all of the other prisoners. It's hard for me to put this one too high because those were some tough years. But again, you just see that Joseph is walking with the Lord. His faith in God isn't shaken. How is that even possible? I don't know. But man, Joseph just keeps walking with the Lord. And then something crazy happens, you guys. 2 new guys come to jail. And they happen to be, both of their jobs are in very close proximity to Pharaoh, who is the most powerful person in the most powerful nation on the planet. The Pharaoh's cupbearer, this is maybe the most trusted person in Pharaoh's whole cabinet. His cupbearer was the one who would come and take a sip of every drink before he gave it to the Pharaoh to make sure there wasn't poison in it. He's the ultimate final guard, if you will, of the Pharaoh. So Pharaoh's cupbearer and Pharaoh's baker, the guy that made Pharaoh's bread and bagels. These 2 guys get thrown into prison. We don't know exactly why they get thrown into prison, but they're now in close proximity to Joseph. If Joseph wasn't in jail, he never meets the cupbearer. He never meets the baker. And so they're in jail, and it's after a while. It's not right away. After a while, These guys, the cupbearer and the baker, they have dreams. They have dreams, and they're trying to get somebody to interpret their dreams. And Joseph says, give me a shot. I've done this before. They share their dreams. And you can read all about it in Genesis 41, but here's what happens. Joseph says, I got good news and bad news. Cupbearer, here's what your dream means. In 3 days, you are going to be restored to your position as the cupbearer of the Pharaoh. That's the good news. Baker, not so good. Within 3 days, you will be killed. It happens. Both of them. 3 days later, it says that now the third day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup in Pharaoh's hand. You think, wow, this is Joseph's way to the top. Certainly the cupbearer will share that Joseph, the dream interpreter, is in prison. This would be a great resource for the Pharaoh. Verse 23, the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. And Joseph goes, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? I mean, we got to go down here, don't we? Are you kidding me? 2 more years. 2 more years in the Egyptian dungeon after that. The story goes that, all right, we're late. Here we go. We got to speed up. The story goes that the cupbearer kind of continues to be in proximity with the Pharaoh. And he hears that the Pharaoh has a dream. And nobody in the whole Pharaoh world wants to take a shot at interpreting this dream. If you try to interpret a dream and you're wrong, you get killed. So nobody's guessing. And the cupbearer overhears this and says, Pharaoh, I should have brought this up earlier, but I know a guy. Pharaoh says, who are you talking about? He tells him the whole story. I was in jail, remember that? Pharaoh's like, yeah, sorry about that. I was in jail, this guy interpreted a dream, it all came true, I'm your cupbearer again. So Genesis 41:14 says, so Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon when he had shaved and changed his clothes. He came before Pharaoh. So Joseph, apparently, not surprising, goes from strikingly handsome servant of Potiphar to like Tom Hanks' Castaway in the Egyptian prison. They shave him, they give him new clothes, they bring him into Pharaoh's palace. Pharaoh says, I heard that you can interpret dreams. Joseph says, I cannot, but I believe in a God who can help me do that. All through this, his faith is not shaken, which is crazy to me. Pharaoh shares the dream, 2 dreams actually, and Joseph listens to them and essentially says, those dreams mean the same thing. Pharaoh says, what do they mean? He says, those dreams mean that for the next 7 years, Egypt is going to experience unbelievable harvests, crops, rain, food, fruit. It's going to be unlike anything that has ever happened in Egypt. For 7 years, we are going to flourish. But after that, there's going to be 7 years of famine. No rain, no crops, little fruit. It's not going to be the same. It's 7 good years followed by 7 bad years. And Joseph says, if we don't plan now, and if we don't build storehouses now, and if we don't save some of what comes in during the first 7 years, then the whole entire nation of Egypt and surrounding nations, we're going to have millions of people that die of starvation. You need to find somebody, Pharaoh, who's going to be able to manage this. And Pharaoh says, I think I'm looking at him. I think you're the guy, Joseph. And Pharaoh elevates Joseph to be second in command of Egypt. In verse 41 it says, Pharaoh says to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. He gives Joseph his ring, he puts him in clothes, he gives him a gold necklace, he rides around in Pharaoh's chariot side by side with him. And Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of the Pharaoh. You got to think, man, this guy's on his way to the top, still has some serious reconciliation to do with his family. But positionally, says, during the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully, just like Joseph said. It says that Joseph built up storehouses all over Egypt. And at first they would start counting it like, oh, we have got X number of, bundles of this and this many pounds of this. But it says it gets to the point where there's so much growing that they can't even keep count of it. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt comes to an end. The 7 years of famine begin, just as Joseph said. There was a famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt, there was food. Millions of people who would have otherwise died of starvation have food on their tables and food for their kids. So when you zoom out and you look at this, you go, man, I guess Joseph kind of had to go through some of these in order to be able to get to some of this. He had to go through some of the downs to get to the part where he's up. And let me just ask you, think about your own life just for a second. Has your life ever felt like this? Did your week feel like this? Has your marriage ever felt like this? Has your relationship with your kids or your parents ever felt like this? Has your career ever felt like this? Ups, downs, highs, lows, seasons to enjoy, seasons to endure. Has it ever looked like this? Not everybody can say yes to this question. I'm asking, was your childhood a good one? Those of us that played Donkey Kong on N64 had it pretty good. Was your child, some of us, you grew up with parents who loved Jesus and a steady home and had food on the table, but not everybody can answer that question the same way. Did you ever lose any extended family members before you were 12 years old? Has anybody here ever had to bury their own mother? Has anybody experienced parents that believe in them? Parents that look at you and say, I believe in you? Has anybody here ever gotten a good gift? A lot of us were videoed when we were 9 years old opening that very good gift by our parents. You know what I mean? Has anybody had a season to enjoy in this way? Has anybody ever been betrayed by somebody that you thought loved you? Has anybody had a strained family relationships? Has anybody ever got a good break? Got a promotion? Last week, I got a check in the mail out of nowhere, $1,800 from somebody named Escrow. I don't even know who that guy is. And some of you are like, Joel, you're an idiot. And I'm like, just let me enjoy it, okay? We overpaid, whatever. I didn't expect it. Nice bump. You ever had an $1,800 bill you didn't expect? Because our check engine light's on too. Has anybody ever been falsely accused? Has anybody got a promotion they didn't even think they deserved? I'm just asking you, has your life looked like this at all? Can you relate? And then really, why does it have to be this way? Wouldn't it be so much easier, God, if we could just line this up, maybe we could just do something like this. Let's just go smooth sailing up and to the right. Can we do that, God? The short answer is that the reason why it's like this is because sin broke the world that we're living in, hence the downs. But God is still gracious, hence the ups. If God wasn't involved, it's only down and to the right. But because of the grace of God, He keeps us up when we should be down. This is a result of living in a world that is broken by sin. The other day, I'll close with this. The other day, Cooper, my 9-year-old, Man, she's swinging hard these days, man. She's asking great questions. She just said, "Hey, Dad, God can do anything, right?" I said, "Oh, yeah, you bet." She said, "Well, then why didn't he just stop Satan in the garden before all this had to happen?" All right, let's see. And so I started thinking about it. I go, "Man, Coops," I said, "have you ever looked at a lifeguard in a chair and who never saved anybody, never went out in the water or anything, and really thought that lifeguard was doing, like, they were really a great lifeguard, that they were like the best lifeguard ever?" She goes, "No." I said, "Why not?" "Well, because they're just sitting there." I said, "Yeah, okay, you're tracking with me." I said, "Now, imagine there's a bunch of kids playing in the ocean, and most of the kids, for the most part, are kind of staying where they're like, knees are below and the waves are coming in, but it's not that rough or whatever. And then one kid just decides that he's going to go further. And so he kind of goes up to his chest, and then a wave hits him, and he's out a little bit further, and there's a riptide, and it takes one of the kids out. And that lifeguard gets down from the chair and takes the surfboard and runs towards the water and jumps in and paddles and rescues that boy that was going to drown. And then brings the boy back. Now, be honest, do you think that lifeguard's pretty cool?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, see, like, God, the grace of God is on full display when we can see how powerful he is to save us." And she gets it. She's kind of tracking with me. But then she's just honest, man. She just goes, "But you know what, Dad? I just wish that didn't have to happen at all. I just wish there wasn't anybody that needed to be rescued. That'd be fine with me." I said, "Me too. That would be to my preference as well." And I just stood there and I was trying to think of what to say next. I said, "Coops, would you let me read you one more Bible verse?" She goes, "Yeah." And I said, "I think it's in Isaiah." I had to look it up. And I said, "Yeah, it's Isaiah 55, 8 and 9. And it describes how big and wise God is." This is Isaiah 55, 8 and 9. This is God who says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." In other words, God knows things that we cannot know. He sees things that we cannot see. He's working on things and through things that we know nothing about. He's doing things we can't do ourselves. And on this side of heaven, this whole story won't make complete sense to you. On this side of heaven, we are limited in our understanding of what God is up to. He's always working, and he's always working for our good. That is really what we ought to notice about Joseph's life so far, is that God takes this roller coaster of endurance and enjoyment, and he makes it all work together for the good of those who love him. When I read that verse to Cooper, I was pretty impressed. She said, "I like that." She said, "Can we write that on the refrigerator?" I said, "Sure. That's usually where we just write groceries, but we can write verses there." And we just wrote that verse out on the refrigerator, her call. And it's almost like she intuitively knew that we were going to need to be reminded of that. That his ways are higher than our ways, that his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, that what he's doing isn't going to be knowable by us at all times. I just wonder if anybody else needs reminded of that today. Maybe you're going through one of the downs, and you're just saying, "What is going on? How could this possibly be a part of a good plan?" His ways are higher. He's working on something. We don't see it all yet. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians. For the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph. All the world. Because the famine was severe everywhere. All the world. Remember that family living over in Hebron? Joseph's 11 brothers, his dad, Jacob. House full of hungry boys will do just about anything to get some food. And I'll bet they're going to come over to Egypt in chapter 42 and see if Egypt has any food, since there's a famine in the whole world. Spoiler alert, they're coming. They're not going to recognize Joseph right away. It's going to be very interesting how it all shakes out. And what you will see happen again is that God the whole time is working for the good of those who love him. It was all according to this plan. And at any of these points, I mean, how many times do you think Joseph prayed to God, what in the world is going on? But in his providential care, he allowed this to happen so that millions of people would be saved. Which is the same thing that God did with Jesus. Like, God sent Jesus, his only son, to die on the cross for our sins so that millions of people would be saved. Do you remember what Jesus said in the garden before he went to the cross? He said, is there any other way? I'll choose the other option. And God said, sin has to be paid for. And Jesus says, well, then I'll do it. I will do it. And Jesus went to the cross to pay for our sins, to save the lives of millions, billions of people. All God's plan. Thanks for watching. To find out more about our church, about when and where we meet, about joining a group, about serving on a team, about giving online, you can find all of it at threecreekschurch.com.